We're joined by Oliver Hartwich, former economics fellow with the Sydney Centre for Independent Studies. He's now the director of the New Zealand Institute and joins us live from Wellington. Thanks very much. Can I first put you on the spot? Will Greece leave the Eurozone?
Yes, absolutely. Greece will leave the Eurozone. It's no longer a question of if they're going to leave the Eurozone, it's only a matter of when. Unfortunately, for economists like myself, it's very difficult to predict that moment because in the end, it is a political question. Political leaders have been postponing the inevitable, I think, for the past 2.5 years. They might try to postpone it a bit further, but eventually, Greece, yes, they will have to depart.
OK, so let's work through the process. How would it work? I would imagine then that there couldn't be a warning because that would see a complete run on Greek banks and perhaps even people leaving the country. This would have to be a surprise, would it not?
Well, yeah, I mean, as far as you can still surprise people after 2.5 years of an economic crisis in Greece, I mean, everybody's expecting that this will happen. And actually, the bank run is already underway because the Greeks have already transferred billions of euros out of their own country, money that is now parked in France, in Germany, in England. And so, in a way, there is little money left in Greek banks that could actually be taken out. However, I agree, it would have to be a surprise. You cannot announce this weeks in advance. You would have thought that it would have been enough time, 2.5 years warning time, really to prepare for such an exit. And yet I believe that when it actually happens, it will be chaotic because the preparations that would have been necessary for monetary reform have not been taken. Monetary reform is a complicated process. We've been there before. We've been at monetary reform in 1999 when the euro was introduced. We had a similar experience when East Germany, for example, adopted the Deutschmark before German unification. And each time these monetary reforms take time, preparation. They are massive operations, and in the Greek case, I think no such preparation has really been undertaken, so when it eventually happens, it will be chaotic.
And so they would essentially have to lock down the country, bring in the military to keep law and order. Is that the case?
Don't know about the military bit, but definitely they would probably have to declare a few bank holidays so people wouldn't be able to access their bank accounts anymore. Probably there would be a stronger police presence needed outside banks for people trying to get the money out of the banks. And generally speaking, they would also have to impose some currency controls at the border. So you would really have to control the money that leaves the country. And then, of course, the big question is, what are you going to call the new currency and how are you going to actually introduce it physically? My guess is that they will probably use the old euro notes, they will stamp them, they will put some kind of magnetic ink on them and basically render them useless outside Greece, declare them the new national currency, declare them the new drachma, whatever you may call it eventually, and say, well, this is our new currency and it will probably be a provisional currency for the first, say, half a year until they actually get proper banknotes printed.
So how on earth would companies in Greece do business outside the country?
Well, they're struggling already. The problem is actually that Greek banks can no longer issue guarantees to companies they are dealing with that would be recognized or easily recognized outside Greece. So the Greek economy is already struggling from that scenario. It doesn't really take monetary reform to get Greek companies into that difficult position. I would actually argue to take Greece out of the euro relatively quickly and start afresh, because the sooner we actually get Greece back on its own 2 feet, the better for the economy, the better the chances for economic recovery. Because once you actually manage to create a more stable situation in Greece, it will be possible for the Greeks actually to return their money they had previously taken out and parked in Germany, in Britain, in France.
So the assumption is that they would default, the debt would be waived, and then they could get themselves back on their feet, presumably, by being much more competitive, increasing tourism and the like.
That's exactly the idea. Just leaving the Eurozone without defaulting doesn't make sense. Just defaulting without leaving the Eurozone doesn't make sense either. They have to do two things at the same time. And then the idea is that they will get that kind of competitive devaluation that will help them to grow their economy again. And there are, of course, cases in the world economy, in economic history, that shows precisely how such a devaluation is done and what effect it can have on a struggling economy. Think of Argentina, for example. But as long as Greece cannot compete in its vital industries, especially in tourism, with its neighboring countries, with Croatia, with Turkey, Greece has no chance of recovering because they need to export. They need currency flowing into the country. Again, the best way for Greece to actually achieve that is to grow its tourism sector.
And just briefly, is this likely to cause a domino effect with the likes of Spain and other struggling countries leaving the euro?
Definitely, because they will be watching quite closely what is going to happen in Greece. If the Greece experiment of leaving the Eurozone ends in disaster and civil unrest, I think they will be very careful of following that. If, however, as I predict, it is manageable and you can get the Greek economy back to growth, then Portugal will be asking itself, why should we stay in? Why shouldn't we just follow the Greek example and do exactly the same to our own economy? Because let's face it, the Portuguese economy is just 2 steps behind Greece.
Oliver Hartwich, thanks very much.
Thank you.